When it comes to crossovers, there are many examples for them all over the media that people will quickly point to. Some of those include Crisis on Infinite Worlds for comics, Super Robot Wars for anime-related media, Super Smash Bros. For video games, and of course Space Jam, the greatest theatrical crossover in the history of cinema. But I'm not here to talk about any of these. Instead, I'd like to talk about a game crossover series that is often overlooked due to its orthodox gameplay, large roster of characters, all following up on their own stories, and its unfortunate release circumstances. You've read the title, and I've already proven myself to be too incompetent to write an introduction, so let's just cut to whatever the next segment is. But before that, I would first off like to mention that these games are all emulated due to the fact that 3DS capture software is expensive as hell, and thus there will inevitably be slowdown that wouldn't normally be present. Namco X Capcom is the first game in the X Zone Trilogy, and the one most people don't know about, because it was only ever released in Japan for the PlayStation 2. And for that reason I will be playing the English fan translation. So for the sake of consistency, I will be referring to all Darkstalkers characters by their Japanese names. I want to make one thing very clear. This is easily and by far the longest game in the series. A casual playthrough takes me personally around 100 hours, whereas the other two only take around 40 to 50 hours to beat. I won't be going into the story for any of these games, as I do think they are all worth experiencing for yourself. However, I will say that this game specifically suffers from an atrocious amount of padding. There's a point during the mid-game where for like 30 hours straight, the entire cast does nothing but run after the one thing. And even after the game is over, you still won't have your hands on it. Thankfully, the story is only second nature to the real meat and potatoes of this game. The character interactions. This game lives and dies by the interactions between its wide cast of characters. There is a total of 39 units in this game, most of those consisting of 2 characters. During this game's 100-hour runtime, every one of those characters gets a good amount of screen time and their own fun subplot, of which some of my favorites include Guns trying to avenge his father's death, the quarrels of a divorced couple between Taizo and Toby, and Felicia and Wonder Momo's double concert. All of these fantastic character interactions come at a price, however. The places and points in time where these characters come from are all over the place. For example, the Xenosaga cast stems from episode 1, and the Tekken cast from a mishmash of the main timeline and the Tekken Tag Tournament timeline. But by far the worst case of this lies within the Tales of Destiny cast. Stan and Rutty are from Destiny 1, whereas Judas is taken from his Destiny 2 incarnation rather than the one from 1. This serves no purpose, and all it does is muddle up the plot and give the trio a subplot, even though they really didn't need one. And it shows. At the beginning and end of a battle, the characters will have a little dialogue, but only between that unit's own characters. Aside from just having some incredibly well-written characters, this game's soundtrack is also absolutely amazing. Brave New World is in my opinion one of the best opening songs for any video game, period. I'd put it up there with Laura's theme from Silent Hill 2. It's that good. Most units in the game get their own theme, but not all. This leads to situations like with the Street Fighter cast. Ryo, Ken, Chun-Li and Sakura all get their own themes, except for Rose, who just reuses Sakura's theme. It's really odd and probably quite nitpicky, but it feels like a really missed opportunity. Overall, the entire soundtrack is fantastic, and here are some of my personal favorite tracks. And I think about now is a good time to actually talk about the gameplay. Namco X Capcom and the entire X Zone Trilogy is a strategy RPG with combo-based combat. On the map you have a very standard affair. You can move your units around, attack, use a skill, wait, use an item, or read up on some things. Using skills takes up a little of your special meter, but that's something I'll get to later. When you attack an enemy or a unit is attacked, you get sent to a secondary combat preparation screen. Here you can choose to counterattack, defend, let yourself be protected by an ally, assuming there is one nearby, and do nothing, as well as use an item or a skill. What you choose actually affects your turn order. Doing anything will set you back. However, you can minimize the setback by successfully executing the quick time events during the battle, which will bring up that unit's placement back a few turns. If you decide to do nothing and take the hit, you can have the unit advance in the turn order quickly, being able to skip a total of 8 turns. When you attack yourself, the enemies cannot do anything but take the hit, and this is where things really get interesting. In Namco X Capcom, the gameplay is centered around one thing and one thing only: keeping a combo going for as long as possible. Every unit has a set number of branches that can only be increased through leveling your characters or equipping specific items. Once your branches run out, you can no longer attack. If you manage to keep a combo going for long enough, you'll start to accumulate special points. These will also come in a set order, one which I do not remember, and they include damage increases, an extra branch or an item. If you drop a combo, you can get these again, and they stack. This leads to some really cool combos. However, you'll only really get a hang for these mechanics by the endgame, because especially early on, you will be decimating each and every enemy with ease in a single turn, as they barely pose a threat. Once your special meter is filled up, you'll be able to use a flashy super move, and they all look cool as hell. If certain characters stand close to one another, they will be able to activate a multiple assault attack, and those hit several enemies at once and look really cool, which is I will not be showing them off here. I highly encourage you all to play this game for yourself, to experience some incredibly cool looking attack animations and just a lot of fan service. These games are incredibly easy, and that leads to a lot of tedious missions where to compensate, the developers swarm you with 50 to 60 enemies at once. Stretch this for about 100 hours and you're going to be incredibly tired by the time you're done. This game is also special in the series for being the last official appearance of characters like Regina from Dino Crisis, as well as featuring a lot of characters from classic arcade series such as Tarosuke from Shadowland, Taira no Kagekyo from Genpei Tomaden, Hiromi from Burning Force, and the Golden Knight Gilgamesh from the Tower of Duraga. Considering this was the first game in this series, nobody expects it to be perfect. And I think about now is a good time to move on to its sequel. Project X Zone is the fourth game in the Cross Zone saga, following up on Super Robot Wars Endless Frontier and its sequel, Super Robot Wars Endless Frontier Xseed. But we're not talking about those. We're talking about Project X Zone, which dropped the original title, as it is now a 3-sim collaboration featuring Sega. And I'm going to say this up front. This is by far my least favorite game in the series. And I'll immediately get to why by starting off with its single greatest sin. Remember how I praised Namco X Capcom's soundtrack earlier? Well, X Zone is the opposite of that. Every single song, no matter how good the composition, sounds god-awful, thanks to this horrid sound font that makes guitars sound like wet farts. Here, have some comparisons to the original songs and their Namco X Capcom counterparts. Even story-wise, this game is a major step back from its predecessor, and the new protagonists are incredibly boring. Each character now has their own theme song, and a random one of those will play whenever you select a unit. This would be cool if the music didn't suck. On the gameplay side of things, a lot has been streamlined. Gone are solo units, range attacks, and multiple assaults. Instead, you now have support units that can be teamed up with a team unit. Once inside a battle, you can press a button to call the support unit, and you start doing a chain of attacks, ending off with a finishing blow. All while you can still attack the enemy yourself. On top of that, if another team unit is close to you, you can have them use an attack as well, with the other shoulder button. Whenever the main unit and one of the two support units hits an enemy at the same time, they will be caught in a cross attack. Doing this, the enemy cannot move and will be easier to hit. They will also be taking a lot more damage. Cross attacks are the only way to fill your special meter up over the 100% stretch. Everything still works on a single special meter that allows you to counter, defend, and now even completely negate any and all damage, as well as letting you use a super move in battle. However, now nothing affects the turn order anymore. It is now completely set in stone, and once your turn is over, you cannot do anything except use your defensive abilities. That's really all I can say about Project X Zone. The cast is still great, with a lot of cool characters, like Frank West or the dude from Dynamite Cop, whose name I don't remember. This is the game where they really started going all out with the multi-franchise pair units. For example, Frank West is teamed up with Lele, Chun-Li with Morrigan, and Dante with Dimitri. Ignore why I just used examples from all Darkstalkers. There is now a huge amount of battle dialogues, thanks to the support and team units, and they are all filled with references, jokes, and more. This game may be the easiest, and by far my least favorite game in the series. But hey, where else can you be able to team up Lady from Devil May Cry with Gemini and Erika from Sakura Wars to fight off a horde of literal spheres? Project X Zone 2 is the latest and, for all we know, last game in the Cross Zone saga, and the one most people have actually played. Bringing in some bigger modern series like Yakuza and Ace Attorney, this game adds Nintendo to a roster of developers, bringing in Fiora from Xenoblade Chronicles and Chrom, Lucina, and Tiki from Fire Emblem Awakening. But by far the most important addition to this game is the inclusion of the man, myth, and legend himself, Segata Sanshiro, from the Japanese Sega Saturn commercials. Xiaomu makes a Castlevania reference at one point, and one of the earlier missions starts with Kiryu, Majima, and Heihachi saving Phoenix and Maya from a bunch of zombies. And all things considered, this is the best game in the series when it comes to the story and the writing. Gameplay-wise, it's more or less the same as X Zone 1, but with two major changes. For one, there is now a new meter, specifically for countering and defending. And then there's the drastic shift in how cross attacks work. Now the enemy will only temporarily be locked in place, and the cross will shatter, dealing a massive amount of damage, but also leaving you open to missing a lot of attacks. Each character still has their own theme, and thankfully, the music is good again. In fact, I would say that these are some of the best versions of these songs. Here, have a listen. And with all this out of the way, there's really nothing more I could be talking about. So that leads us to the title of this video. Project X Zone is special. It's special because there's nothing quite like it, nor will there ever be anything quite like it. Most crossover video games like Marvel vs. Capcom or Super Smash Bros. Don't really see the characters interacting much, whereas that is the main draw of X Zone. They were able to craft a large world encompassing past, present, future and several worlds, all fitting into a shared universe with a set of rules that is never broken, paying full attention not to contradict itself. In conclusion, Project X Zone really is special. Not because it's better than the rest, but because it has a unique personality, one that can simply not be imitated. And I hope I was able to at least make you appreciate this little series just a little more. And if nothing else, these games are incredibly quotable, to the point where I made an entire channel on my Discord server dedicated to exactly that. Cheers, and I hope you have a wonderful day.